For many centuries, the principle of submission has been perceived as to imply that those who are suggested to perform this act for the other who is asserted to be in power, as the weak and not a human being who is in jurisdiction of their own destiny under the divine. This has been the lie for many centuries and the ideology of many cultures, which has taken advantage of millions of human beings for the sake of control. However, those who are in true power are those who have in fact offered their submission and therefore cooperation to those who are in truth, the powerless. This is the subject matter in the political terms as well as other areas of living. This is to identify where and who has the real power and who are the powerless in fact, as this reveals the dangers of dependency upon both parties, because of having not the power nor intelligence to sustain one's own living state. They have been convinced that they are in need to be governed by an outside government system in opposition of their own instinctively, based upon this government's asserted constitution that is claimed to be of a better service to those who are convinced that they are better off giving their freedom and therefore natural state of independence to those who are convinced to be the strong and of the better knowing, for them to obtain a sense of freedom and strength from those who are in fact the weak. The lacking of intelligence for a community to be enabled to gain their status of living upon their own, but will enforce violence and the subjugation of another community upon every level of existence, for the objective of cultivating their so-called civilization, reveals a people who are incapacitated and in fact naturally unable to reach a degree of success without causing the bloodshed and suffering of others in whom they know is and has forever been independent of them. As this may be sounded as if this is claimed of only the Western culture, this state of mind has filtered into every culture upon the earth. As this claim can never be repudiated because this mentality has forever been the primary disease upon humanity, as well as the demands imposed by the shedding of blood as well as the enforcements of religious doctrines, also for the sake of control rooted in fear. The demand for submission is within itself a very delicate idea which must be understood properly and understood of where the power lie in fact. As with other ideas, the ideology of submission has been altered into areas of living which has hurt humanity, as it has convinced many to surrender their own freedom to those government systems who intended to own their very bodies, minds and souls. So, this is concerning those who are said to be the kings and the queens over a community of people. If submission gives the king and queen power and authority, then if they choose to withdraw their allegiance to their act of submission to their authority, then they fail in their power based upon the people's submission which cultivates their authority over their lives. Where then is the power in their name and position? Explain how they are a king and a queen in fact in regards of being an independent powerful entity, without the submission of others considered below them. And how are those who are considered lower than them, also are those whom give them their power and stature through their generosity of their submission to them? As many would not touch this subject in its true essence, because of various reasons including ego or the flattery of glittering omissions which feed the imagination of them being powerful as those who have oppressed them, there is obvious a state of fear and rejection of the truth of this, that many who have forever called themselves kings and queens, have only gotten those positions of power, because of those who had some time been manipulated to think and feel, that the idea of the submission formula and act is providing security for those who have been made to feel as though they lack it. During my observation of London, England and its culture, it is the same the world over of those lands in which carry this mentality that many in their admiration look up to because of inwardly feeling powerless within their living experience. Those who are the servants, those who have been forced or have submitted willingly after a time of abuse upon every level and the implementation of the fear of not being able to provide for themselves after the government systems of gain of violent control over their natural resources, have forever been those who possess the real power. The true power is with those who are considered the weak, the governed. It is quite obvious that those who are observed to be independent of their destiny have forever been an endangerment to those who intellectually lack control over their own. If your position is empowered by the submission of others, then those who have submitted to your idea are in fact those who have the power. You are uplifted because you fail to know of how to uplift yourself without causing acts of inhumane acts upon another. The so-called peasants are in fact those whom possesses the power which kings and queens assert they possess. It has forever been this way. To first impose this idea upon others is the first step to power, and then to enforce it to progress through the times of lies and bloodshed being an option for resolve in case of a non-cooperation, has forever been secured through the might and therefore fear of military power if those who have truly the power decide to in any manner rebel against a system which has convinced them through the centuries that they are in need of being controlled for the sake of their own survival. This is another form of addiction. The ideology of having to have a so-called leader to guide one through a living experience, which has the capacity of guiding its own host through the times of development and into greatness. When has any human civilization showed themselves to be so uncivil that they decided to be irresponsible to allow themselves to be servants to anyone whom they deemed as a king or queen over them, who in fact hold the power of life and death because it was given to them? These ideas of domination are getting ready to surface much more openly and intensely in these times because of the breaking down of the natural instinct of the human family, which has produced a human being who has been made dependent upon government bodies and their constitutions for their freedoms, when in fact, they only have provided their services through their submission in giving their natural freedoms away. Written by David Anthony Brayboy.